So one of the things that we knew for sure when the budget was announced was that there would be a raft of analysts dissecting it, pouring over the detail to tell us what the impact of that budget is going to be in the real world. And the impacts are starting to come to light now. And there's one in particular that I want to talk about in this video because it's very, very pertinent to what we talk about on this channel. And that is pensions, retirement planning, and all of that stuff that people don't really necessarily think about until it's way too late. Now, let me read you this headline. Reeve's tax raid risks pushing more workers into retirement crisis. This is according to one of the leading pension bosses in the UK right now. Now, you may be thinking, well, how, what, why, what does it all mean? Well, let me just explain. Well, if you remember, in the budget, there were two specific things that Rachel Reeves did that impact pensions and pension contributions. The first is the fact that she increased the national living wage for people on the lower end of the income spectrum. No complaints there. I think it was a good move, but it does cost money. The second thing she did was she increased employer national insurance contributions. Now, that was the contentious one, right, that we spoke about quite a bit here on the channel. Now, how do those two things possibly impact pensions, you're probably asking? Well, look, let's talk about it. So what the combination of those two things basically mean is that now it's going to cost employers more money to employ employees. And that additional cost is going to have to be passed on in some way, shape, or form, either to employees or to consumers, customers. We're already hearing that those two things are going to impact pay rises, bonuses, pension contributions, and it's the latter that we want to talk about here in this video. But before we get on to talking about pension contributions and how it can and will impact pensions specifically, we have to talk a little bit about auto-enrollment. Now, if you don't know what auto-enrollment is, auto-enrollment was a piece of legislation that was introduced back in 2012, 2013, basically making it illegal, or a legal requirement, I should say, for your employer to pay into a pension on your behalf. And in doing so, it meant that you also had to make a minimum contribution. So currently, under auto-enrollment, you pay 5%, your employer pays 3%, so 8% combined. It's been a great piece of legislation, hugely successful. We are at a level now where we've never had more people engaged in their workplace pensions than any time in history. So a big tick in the box when it comes to auto-enrollment and how positive it has been. However, there is an issue with auto-enrollment, and the issue is that basically 8% isn't enough to fund people's basic living requirements or standards right now, let alone in retirement. And there was an interesting stat in this article, which I'm going to read to you. It says just 1 in 7 workers is making large enough pension contributions to be able to maintain their living standards into retirement. 1 in 7. So essentially, 6 out of 7 people are not making anywhere near enough in pension contributions to maintain their standard of living in retirement. It's a big, big problem. Now, how does this relate to national living wage going up and employee national insurance contribution going up? Well, what in the background, despite the success of auto-enrollment, there has been an effort for the minimum amount that goes into auto-enrollment, and that 8% to be increased to 12%. And that naturally means that you will have to pay more, I will have to pay more, and employers would be asked to pay more as well. So with that 4% increase, it's likely that they would ask for employees to pay 2%, employers to pay 2%. But with the increase to national living wage and the increase to employer national insurance contributions is going to make that change so much more unlikely. And this is important because when you start to have a look at the 8% problem, and I say it's a problem because when you start looking at the national average wages, 8% is nowhere near close enough. And I want to dive into some of these numbers that I dove into in a video a couple of months ago. Now, the average wage in the UK at the moment is £30,000 or thereabouts. Now, under auto-enrollment, you're going to pay 8% of that into your pension. So that's about £2,400 per year, which is £200 per month. Now, you may think that that's a lot of money. It is, but in the scheme of things, depending on your age, it's not going to be enough. If you're in your 20s, you're probably just about there, because if you use the general rule of thumb around pension contributions, which is taking your age, dividing that by 2, and then that should be the amount that you pay into your pension pot. In your 20s, 10%, you're contributing 8, you're pretty much there. However, when you get to your 30s and your 40s, it's hugely problematic, because what you find is that there is a ever growing gap. And I'm just going to run the numbers for you. So again, average wage in the UK, £30,000, 8%, £2,400 per year, £200 per month. Now, if you're in your 30s earning £30,000 per year, you should be contributing somewhere between 15 as a minimum and 20% to give yourself the assuredness that you're going to have a decent retirement. If you're only contributing 8, you can see where the problem is. You're between 7 and 12% behind where you need to be. If you're in your 40s, it's even more scary. In the real world, I think that people get busy with day jobs, people get busy with business, people get busy with work and career and all kinds of other things, that this type of thing will get lost in translation. I mean, literally, this is a headline that I'm talking to you about today. Most people will remember it tomorrow, and it will be out of mind, out of sight. And I think it's important that we dwell on this topic whilst we can, because at the end of the day, there is one stark reality that is absolutely true. The government is not going to fix this. The government is not going to come and save you. The government is not there to ensure that you have a comfortable retirement. And so the onus is on every single one of us to make sure we're making the financial provisions to give ourselves the ability to have a comfortable retirement. I mean, if you look at the mandate for auto enrollment, it says it right there on the tin. So you're less reliant on the state. Now, I did make a video where we talked about when is it too late to start planning for retirement. And I was very specific in that video around this might be the age where you find that it's going to be very, very difficult for you to be able to work back the numbers to take action if you've left it late enough. And I do want to focus on the things that we can do, because ultimately, if we don't focus on things that we can do, what do you do? Cry or laugh? I mean, both are just as bad as each other in the conversation that we're having right now. So here's a few things for you. If you're watching this video, and I know that, my age demographic has changed recently to the more mature side of the audience. If you are in your late 40s, 50s, heading towards your 60s, and retirement is a big thing that's on your mind right now, the first thing you need to do is try and figure out how much you have in pensions that you hold or have accumulated over the course of your career. This is so important. The minute you know how much you have in pensions, you can start to work backwards around what you're actually going to need. Finding out what your state pension entitlement is going to be is also very important, because that state pension income is a guaranteed level of income that you can rely upon, and is going to shorten any shortfall or make that shortfall feel less large if you have one. So that's the first thing. Try and understand what you actually have going on in terms of your pension. The second thing is, especially if you're, again, at that later stage of life, try and understand what exactly it is that you need in retirement in terms of your income. Do you need 10 grand a year? Do you need 24 grand a year? Those two numbers are very, very different. And even when you consider state pension and you throw that into the equation, the numbers that you're going to be looking to plan with are very, very different and will need specific things done. It's only once you know those two things you can start to reverse engineer. Now, if you are in your 30s, maybe your 40s, you need to be paying attention to your pensions, and particularly your workplace pension, making sure that it's invested not just in the default fund, you've got it into something that is actually going to make your money work harder for you. You need to consider within your personal finances whether you can afford to put more into your workplace pension, into your auto enrollment. Many people ask me, should I do workplace pension versus private pension? You should always look at workplace pension first, particularly if they have a matching scheme in your company. And a lot of companies, after the increases in the budget, will probably do away with things like matching. But if you work for a large company, it is likely that they're going to have one available. So if you're not asking the question, you need to ask the question to know whether they will pay in more if you pay in more, and they will match you. So those are two things right there. And if you can pay more into your pension, then please do it. But, in this comparison around your workplace and your private pension, make sure you're doing the comparison so you know exactly what it is that you're going to try and achieve in a personal pension versus your workplace pension. Oftentimes, workplace pensions have a cap on their fees in terms of how much they can charge you. And that's an important consideration, because if the workplace pension, for example, is only charging you 0.5%, but you're going to an external provider where you're paying 0.75%, that needs to be something that you consider in what you end up with in terms of the value of your portfolio when you actually need to access it. There are lots of moving parts to this, but what I'm trying to get at here is, please don't let this be a headline that you forget that, yeah, you listen to this and be like, oh, yeah, I'll get round to that. Please take action on it. And please try and proactively think about the things that you can do so that this doesn't negatively impact you. You don't want to be one of those 6 people who hasn't saved enough to have a comfortable retirement, and you get there and it's like, well, what did I work all my life for? That's all I want to say in this video. Please let me know in the comments down below what you think and what your thoughts are on this. Are you one of those 6 out of 7 that you're fearful that you're not going to have enough in retirement? I know plenty of people who are in that exact position, and it's terrifying. And one of the reasons why I created this channel is so that we can have these type of conversations to prevent that from happening to people who are willing to take action. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you in a bit.